I wanted to welcome you here. My name is Fabian Williams. I'm a principal product manager at Microsoft. I work on the Microsoft 365 core team. Previously, I was on the Graph team, the Microsoft Graph team, but now I'm on, well, now everybody at Microsoft is on the Copilot team, right? But in my sense, I'm on the Copilot team that does developer experiences. So I ship features, I'm a feature PM, I ship features that make developers' life easier to create agentic solutions. You can all email me at fabian.williams@microsoft.com. The qualifier is that I will always get back to you. It may take a little bit of time, but my job as a product manager is to listen to feedback and questions. So I welcome all feedback and questions. For those who are coming inside here, I'll just repeat it for the last time now. You don't have to take any notes. If you like taking notes, go ahead, but you don't have to. Everything here is under that short link right here. There's a repo that has all of the code that I have here today. You can test drive the public agent version of what I'm going to be talking about here today by that QR code there. The point being is that I have 2 sessions on MCP. This is a beginner one. There's going to be an advanced one. The advanced one is in the cloud, which means that you can access it, which is part of the reason why MCP is so cool, because the one that I'm going to do today, I could turn off internet on my computer. It'll still work because it's all standard I/O, which we'll talk about later on. So let me set the stage again. Just a little bit of history so that we can get everything going. The first thing you should understand is that everything, or pretty much everything, it may be 85% now, of what you're going to see here today, including the deck that I have, was created by using MCP servers in one way or the other. This deck was created by using Anthropic Claude Skills. How many people here know about Anthropic Claude and Claude Skills? A few people, all right. So Claude Skills is a fantastic tool. If you ask me where we're going from MCP, because I think MCP is a great standard that we can build around. The next thing is going to be like what Claude Skills is doing. What shape it will take, nobody really knows. Claude Skills is what, maybe a month old now, maybe 3 weeks to a month. It's very brand new. But what it really does, it combines the stochastic or non-deterministic nature of LLMs and agents with determinism, in terms of saying that you can actually have maybe a Python code or something there, and it puts them both together so that you can actually have something that is mainly consistent in terms of the results. So, and that's Claude Skills, and I use that to create most of the slides that are here today, which are basically HTML files, because you can use Python to create that. The demos, as I mentioned, are going to be all around MCP. I talked about the fact that one's going to be local and one's going to be in the cloud. And as I mentioned before, ask me a ton of questions here, because I'm here for today and tomorrow only. Some caveats, as I mentioned before as well too. Just want to put this out there because I think the session is being recorded. The demos are built. It may sound like a lawyer wrote it, but I just wrote this maybe 10 minutes ago. It's not a lawyer wrote it. I wrote it. I'm not working with any of the conferences here today. A lot of the demos using their data, but it's their data on their public website. I use tools and techniques to retrieve that data, and I pull down one via a PDF. The data is aged by 2 weeks because I started playing around with this 2 weeks ago. The results that you may see here today may be different even if I run it twice. Again, because of the stochastic nature of just how LLM works, it'll do it once this way, it may give it the same answer differently the other way, but hopefully the answers are correct. It just may look a little bit differently. So that may be based on the clients. I'm going to be using a couple different clients here today. I'm going to be using Claude Desktop. I'm going to be using LM Studio. I'm going to be using Copilot Studio. I'm going to be using ChatGPT, because all of those can use LLMs. I'm sorry, MCP. And this is a point I want to actually hammer home. One of the reasons why I built the second tool, the one about Conference Haven, is because when you go to different conferences, Ignite has their own app. You have a friend of mine, his name is Otis Hugo out of Germany. He has one that's called it's ECS, I forget what, run something another, run.events. And then you have the Wova app. There's so many different apps for conferences that you go to, but they really anchor around those conferences. There's not one that you can ask about all conferences. So I said, well, what if we did that? What would that look like? So that's one of the reasons why I use the word scrape. Didn't want to use the word scrape. That's one of the reasons why I use tools to pull down all of these data inside one place and use MCP to surface it. Because guess what? All of those clients, all of those, I guess you can call them apps or clients, become the client tool, right? If you want to use ChatGPT, use ChatGPT. If you want to use Claude, use Claude. It doesn't really matter because all you need to do is hook the MCP inside there. So we basically flattened it and got away off with the UI layer. So if you're at work right now and you're thinking about a use of MCP, this is one particular use case right here. It flattens everything down, it removes or obfuscates the UI layer, and you can just use anything you want because the LLM is in front of it to basically take that question and return results. Model selection is also going to make it vary. If I'm using Claude Desktop, obviously I'm using Claude Sonnet or a version of Sonnet. If I'm using ChatGPT, I'm using a version of GPT. If I'm using LM Studio, it's local, so I can use whatever I want. So, but the answers are going to be different as well too, right? So consider that too. And as I mentioned before, it is stochastic, it is non-deterministic, so you get that as well too. Here's a good picture slide, but it's also going to be available to you as well too. Besides everything being inside GitHub, these are all of the links that I think you may possibly need to learn about everything that I'm going to talk about here today. The first one is the website that I created just to stand in front of the tools so people can understand how it works. The second one is a 1 minute, what do they call them, YouTube short, to show how it works. I did that just to mess with people at Ignite. The next one is a long form video. The other one is the chat experience, direct chat. The GitHub repo, which you saw in the first one. I do a ton of videos on YouTube just talking about stuff that's in my head, and just to lament a little bit about product managers that they always need to try different tools. So as I learn something new, I usually go and try it. I'm a big, how many people here subscribe or listen to Lenny's podcast? You guys don't know about Lenny's podcast? One person? Trust me, you want to check out Lenny's podcast. Comes out usually around Friday or Saturday, but by Sunday it's up. And he always has people talking about the next tech that's coming. And I usually like pull down his transcript and create a lab from it and just play around. And those will be in the video. So now we're going to get into the meat of things. So the first thing when we're talking about MCP is that it is not a solution looking for a problem. The problem actually exists, and this is a great solution for it. The reason why I like talking about MCP now is because it's more of a standard. As much as it may ebb and flow with different way people implement that standard, it is still a standard. If you can, and it's not new, by the way, as well. Next slide we'll talk about how you had what, SOAP, WCF, and even now REST. This is just another evolution of that. So the point to hammer here, the key takeaway is that by itself, an LLM is basically stupid. It's a next token predictor. A token can either be a word or a fraction of a word. That's all it can do. That's all it's actually meant to do. The reason why you have this big wave of now AI, influence and work going on is because you've put tools in front of it, and you've also grounded it inside data, so it can actually make useful information and take, impactful actions. But one of the things that is a limiting factor is the context window. So as much as you want to stuff inside that context window, which consider it basically the runtime memory of that agent or of that agentic experience at that point in time, a couple of things will happen. One, bigger context window, you may think it's a good thing. It can be, but it's sometimes a bad thing. Because what will happen is that as you start to build up that context window, as you move from left to right, from 0 to to whatever the nth number here is that by the time you get to the middle, everything may be perfect. The minute you start going over the middle of that context window, it starts to forget what's at the front of the context window. And that's where hallucination starts to happen, right? So it'll think it knows the answer because it's in the context window, but it may mess stuff up. By the time it gets towards the end of the context window, it is giving you rubbish in the middle and definitely rubbish in the front of it. So the idea here is that you want context window that's large enough, but the better answer is to have an experience where you have multiple agents or multiple tools that are very precise, very specific in what they're doing, and manage the context around that. So you want more agents, not one agent with a large context window, if that makes any sense. Privacy concerns, that's another one, right? So I am a huge proponent of small language models. In fact, I think that small language models are going to be the way that you democratize AI, because it should run locally on your own machine, right? Which gives you that privacy that you want. So it never leaves your machine. The prompt doesn't leave your machine. The model information, the model that gets the prompt doesn't leave your machine. when it gives you the inference and puts it back, it doesn't leave your machine either. But obviously, it's not a frontier model, so it can't do so much. On my box, I'm running the GPT OSS 120 billion parameter. That's the open source one from OpenAI. But this box right here that I have, can take that. Just for your edification, it is a MacBook Pro M3 Max, 128 gigabytes of RAM, 40-core GPU. But I paid up the wazoo for that because I develop LLMs, and not everyone's going to have that. But over time, you would expect that these hardware will get cheaper, the models will get smaller and more powerful. I'm just moving further in the curve than waiting for it to meet me. But privacy is important, and if it's important, you want to have like a small language model as well. Integration complexity. We're all running very fast. 3 years ago, ChatGPT, 3 to 4 years ago, ChatGPT came out, and ever since then, there's been a race. It is not a long time. It just feels like a long time because every week something else is new. What you'll find is that even within Microsoft's own walls, everyone's working on some form of copilots. Everyone's working on something AI. And you'll find that we're all moving outwards, and we're all chasing our own metrics, things that we're measured against. And we may sometimes even not look at the standard. One person's doing it over here this way, one person's doing it that way over here. And it's just because we have to move that fast because there's competition right behind us, and we're trying to also leapfrog other people. So it comes at a cost. That what you will have is fragmentation. Because of this integration complexity, having an MCP server, which is basically a way to create a standard around it, helps you with that. So in the end, what is MCP? Consider it a USB for AI. That's just probably the way that people talk about it now. Just like a USB cable, you put it in and it just should work. I'm not going to drain this deck, but if you're using MCP, it should just work. If you're not using MCP, you're building a bunch of stuff. This is probably the best visual to actually outline it because it also it goes back to history. If you replace the words MCP that you see inside the ring around AI application and change AI application just to application, you could put REST there and just application and it would still work. Right? You could put anything there and it will still work because the key takeaway here is that any organization will have a database with their own data inside it. They may have an ERP system or a SaaS system like GitHub, or they front end something with a web API, and they get the data there. Think about REST. You do that with a REST site, and you can go directly to GitHub as a SaaS application. You could have a messaging application like Gmail, email like Gmail, or something messaging like Slack or Teams or Outlook. Basically, if you want to be Microsoft specific, or it can be a local file system. All of these things are ways that business operate in terms of their communication and collaboration within the walls of their offices and also with their external parties, right? It is not new. As I mentioned before, we've been doing this for a while, and we have different protocols that we've done it with. This is what you really need to grok when it comes to MCP, right? If you know these three things, you can have a conversation around MCP with anybody, all right? There are three primitives, or three things that are fundamental to MCP. And I'm going to spend some time here because it is important. One is tools. And it says here that the tools are model control. It has in bold, Claude may decide which tool to call and so on and so forth. But you can swap Claude out for Copilot Studio. You can swap Claude out for ChatGPT. You can swap Claude out for any of those clients I mentioned before. The point is that the client decides, which tool to call. And that's important. Remember, we said that we want to move away with the client. You're now giving any client the ability to do that. And that comes from a process of having tool discovery. Whenever there's an MCP server, there's tool discovery. Now, I'm going to pause here for a minute. There's good and bad with that, right? This is all emerging technology. So let me not paint a bunch of roses for you. The good is that it's auto discovery. So if I decide one day to come up and give you a new feature, just like that, it's there. There's no shipping. There's no waiting. The next day or the next minute, it's available to you. That's also the bad. Maybe if you have governance and change management inside your organization, you don't want that, right? You want to be able to put this on side in a pipeline where you have dev, test, integration, regression, and then production. And maybe you want to put it all through that. MCP currently doesn't provide an easy way to do that. There's ways to do it, but it's not an easy way to do that, right? In some tools, it basically is automatically on. It should basically be automatically off, and then you opt in. Resources. Resources are, are app controlled, and you'll see this a little bit later. So you still need to have something that's backing the server. So you're going to write some type of code that's going to be talking to some type of database, some type of SaaS, some type of file system that is going to do that. So basically your resources are app control. It could also be just a document. It could be a grounded document. It can be a PDF. I think the gentleman here who was in this session before actually loaded up a PDF document and he was able to ask questions for it using RAG and stuff like that. That's just another example. But you can actually have just a document and just have that document be the resource as well. Similarly, if you go to like ChatGPT or Claude right now and you do plus sign and then you do add local files and it uploads a document, same concept, right? But there's not MCP. And the prompts are now in the control of you, the users. You control the prompts, right? So that means that there's a burden of responsibility even on you yourself or your users who you're going to create these MCP servers for. Garbage in, garbage out, right? You still need to educate people how to craft proper prompts and also provide guidance in terms of which one work and which one don't work. Now, think about this as well too, because you could have a prompt that works perfectly. The evals are off the roof. It does everything you're supposed to do. But guess what you do? You change the model. What happens then? Doesn't work so good, right? Or something may happen. So these are all, there's a lot of factors that go into this in terms of what can happen. And that's why if you heard the term evals are important. Evals are a good way for you to basically measure your success and quality of your agentic solutions. And you should always be running evals, because even if the prompts don't change, you're always going to be upgrading your models, upgrading something, changing something, and that'll change the result. Again, it's non-deterministic, so it's going to do that. So another way to think about this is, again, I'm a visual person, so I try to have like maybe 3 different ways of showing something. You have your MCP server that's on your client. The client can be anything. You can have multiple MCP servers. That's the one thing that's different here on a particular client. In fact, in my example here today, I have the local one, and I have also the cloud one, all right? Now, you can see what would happen if I turned both of them on, right? Would that be a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a good thing? No, you guys are on fumes, aren't you? All right. So I need you guys to respond. So it's not a good thing, right? Because it's tool discovery. Now it has 2 different MCP servers talking about seemingly the same tool. They may be called something different, but they're going to be, and then you may have mismatches, right? So here's another way of thinking about it as well. Now this is with the UI in place. You may be asking and using GitHub as an example. I want to see what type of PRs are out there, pull requests that are out there. AI is going to respond. So it needs to find out which tools are available. One tool is get all the repos. The other one is basically get the pull requests, and it goes against the GitHub API. And yet another, actually, I'm going to skip that one right here. I'm going to start going to some tools right now and show you what this looks like. How many people here have used or are using LM Studio? 1, 2 people, 3 people, 3 people. All right, cool. LM Studio is a free tool. I advise all of you, if you can use it, to go get it. It works both on Mac and on PC. What it does for you, it gives you the ability to run models locally on your computer that you can pull down from Hugging Face, from Ollama. As you can see here at the very top, if you can squint, you can see this is the GPT OSS 120B version. But I also have Llama on there, I have Qwen on there, I have DeepSeek on there, and I can run this. This keeps everything on your machine. And on the right-hand side, you can see the MCP servers that are there. You can see 2 of them lit up, the one that are basically local to my computer, and Conference Haven, the one that is on the cloud, and you can see some examples of it there. So this is an example of how you can run MCP locally using this tool. Here's an example of me issuing a query, asking it, what conferences do we have through the rest of the week? And you can see the responses coming back. A point to note, notice here it says it thought about it for 31 seconds. You may say, oh my God, 31 seconds, that is crazy. Why would I want to do that? And the answer is here. Again, it's a local model. And even with this beast of a machine, this is a 120 billion parameter model that I'm running on this machine. So yeah, it's going to go through this thought process. And this model has something that's called a mixture of experts, and you can tune that. You can have up to 8. I think I have 4 going right now, which means it's going to bounce information off these experts before it's going to give me an answer. And I said do it with up to 4. So that is latency. Plus, it's a lot of parameters, so it takes time. But it will do a good job in terms of returning the results. So I basically have that as a trade-off. Claude Desktop, similar experience. You basically install the MCP server. Here you can toggle them on and toggle them off. This is the same question that was being asked. This is the results that are here. Notice also the result in LM Studio, it gave it to us in a table. Exact same prompt, but it gave me in a table. This one in Claude gave me inside, basically just a narrative form. Nothing different, just the model that's different as well, right? And this is its thinking process and so on and so forth. With ChatGPT does not allow you currently to do local MCP server, so you can't do standard I/O. I haven't talked about that, but I will get to it a little bit. So basically, you have to have a hosted model. So only the Conference Haven one could work here. And if you have ChatGPT, and I think you must have the paid subscription to have apps and connectors turned on. Don't quote me on that. They changed things currently. But the experience is easy. And I'm not doing SSC anymore, which is server-sent events. I'm doing HTTP streaming now, but you'll see that a little bit later on. But you point it to a URL, and it has all of the tools in the bottom there, and you basically connect to it. This is just all of the flavors. Now, because this room has a lot of devs, another thing that you could be doing, you could basically have MCP servers inside VS Code. How many people here use VS Code as their IDE? Quite a bit of you. Okay, so not to your surprise, there's a bunch of ways that you can have MCP servers there as well too. So if you can go to agent mode and make it work. But whether you're a dev or not, this is a Microsoft conference. I would be remiss not to talk about Copilot Studio. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time here because if you have an M365 tenant and you have Copilot licenses, this is available to you. So let's talk about it. So with Copilot Studio, there is native support for MCP, Model Context Protocol. You basically click, you go to Tools, you go to Add New Tool, you put in the URL, it comes to here, you click Connect, and it turns green. And similarly, you basically have your MCP now, and you have all of your tools again available to you. And when you have all of those tools available to you, you can then subsequently ask questions again about, does the first one was, tell me about the conferences, and the other one is, does Kevin McDonald have any sessions at ESPC? And these are the answers here. Why this specific example? Kevin McDonald is actually an MVP out of the UK. He's going to be doing a session on MCP, not next week, but the week after. And he wanted to use my MCP server, and it was broke. So he called me, literally called me, 12 p.m. his time, 12 p.m. his time, noon. What time is that here in the United States? East Coast. Exactly. Woke me up out of my sleep, but I did go and help him and give him that. And so it made my demo. I told him I'm going to shame him every chance I get. But it allowed me to basically demo this here for you here today. Now, if you're running locally, you'll notice here that this has a path. If this was on a Windows machine, it would be C:\\whatever. But if you're running an MCP server, as I mentioned before, you can run it locally or in the cloud. Locally, it's going to be on your machine, so it basically goes to a path, and you could either run it as a .NET app, or in this case for me, it's running as a Python app. So you give it the executable, you point it to where the script is, and it just starts to run. Conversely, if you're doing this as a hosted solution, you point it to the URI, and this is the correct URI this time, mcp.conferencehaven.com/API/MCP as a connector, and this is both Claude, because Claude supports both local and hosted. And this is something that only came out a week and a half ago, and it's still in beta, I think, as well too, where Claude Anthropic is now allowing you to have your own MCP server that you can use inside Claude Desktop. We're getting to the meat of it right now as well too. The demo that you're going to see me run a little bit later on is using this Python script. You'll see it's parked on server.py. Again, the code is in my repo. You can get to it. But the point to note out here is basically the yellow arrow, which is pointing to sessions.db, which is the local DB server on my machine. So if you turn off the machine, it'll still work. And these are the Python scripts that are basically running this MCP server. All right. So everything is all encapsulated here from a local perspective. This, even though I am doing something where the database has all of the sessions and the Python script is going to retrieve them, one of the features that I have inside of the tool as well is for you to add it to your calendar. Now, to add it to your calendar, something needs to email it to you, right? Either as a calendar entry or as an email. So I'm using, again, the Microsoft Graph here for that. So the graph now is not local to my machine. The graph is out there in the sky. So, so that requires you to do OAuth and to get it done. I won't spend too long here, but this is an important thing because I like to talk about both architecture and data flow. This is a data flow diagram that shows exactly how the process works when you're working with MCP. Imagine there's a user, there's our code. Our code sits on top of the client, which can be, we mentioned before, ChatGPT, LM Studio, all of the things that we talked about before. In this case, it's Claude and basically GitHub. So you ask a question, it goes to the client. The client has the MCP server on there, and it knows it has tools. So now it needs to figure out what tools are available for it. So it does a tool call request. Now it comes back with a list of tools. There's some important things inside here, so I'm gonna call them out. The person this issues a prompt, which is a query. There's MCP servers and they're available. What tools do you have for me? Here are the tools. The next thing it does, it says, here's a query and all of the tools, and it sends that back to Claude, the client, back to Copilot, the client, back to LM Studio, the client, back to any client. What's happening here, however, though, is that it's now figuring out, is this the right prompt to send? So it could potentially change the prompt. I was going to say enhance, but enhance is relative, right? It could really enhance it the wrong way. So the point there is that it'll change the prompt a little bit so that it'll respect the parameters that the tool's expected to have. If the tool says it needs 3 parameters in order to do this query, it's going to figure out in that prompt, are those 3 things present? If those 3 things are not present, is one optional? Do I need it? Then it needs to ask a clarifying question to the person. Well, tell me this before it does that. So it returns the tool use back to the code, and the code figures that parts out, and then it sends everything back all the way through and respond. So that middle piece is important because a lot of people get tripped up on that bit right there. And this comes in important if you are doing anything around observability and evas, as we talked about before, because you may think the utterance, what the person asks for, is what's being sent to the LLM to do some work. But if there's an MCP or other tools involved, it could be augmented, right? So you need to figure that part out as well too. And that could also vary based on the orchestrator that you have. I'm going to pause here for a minute because I've talked a bunch. Any questions on anything I've covered so far?
Hypothetical, let's say you had a business users that had access to an MCP server. There's someone, say they had Claude right there, going to an MCP server that you're looking at hosting locally. Mm-hmm. If they were to send this request, is it going to go and hit this pull request for every single user every single time hitting that MCP server?
But you said one thing that I want to make sure that I understand. I'll rephrase it, and then everyone will hear what it said. You said that this is a user that's running the MCP server locally.
No. So say we have an MCP server hosted
inside the organization. Okay, so it's available to everyone. Okay, right. Yeah. So the question is it going to do the tool call every time? Yeah, the answer is yes. Because it has to know what's available to it, because a couple of things can happen. I'm just going to pop out here. You could come here and do something like this, and then this conference session, and you can turn off this one and turn off that one, right? Which means the tool call every single time, it may not know what's there, so it needs to always go out and do that. Does that make sense? So but it's not an expensive call. It's a cheap call to make, for network. Any other questions, sir?
I'm sorry, I don't late. Is there any risk of security concerns?
Tons. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, that's too risky.
Well, there's mitigation, right?
Anyone can, any hidden malware, any prompt injection, it's easy. You can take it in a second.
That's true of any AI solutions, but there's always mitigations, right? The only secure system is the one you plug out the wall. But that being said, you could have human in the loop built in. So as something come in, if something is flagged, and you can use stop words to flag things, or you can do a variety of different rules based, so it's not stochastic, in order to flag that, in order to put those guardrails in place. You could also have a system prompt that's there that is very tightly done to stop prompt injection attacks. In fact, mine has that as well. If you go to, well, you said you came late, but there was a QR code that's there for something that I created that anyone can use. But if the person just put a username inside, a speaker name inside there, it says, do you want to know about the speaker, or do you want to know about sessions the speaker have? That's me writing something in the system prompt, and I can show that a little bit later on. So there's a lot of mitigation that you can do, but you're right, left alone, if you gave somebody in your organization the ability to create MCP servers unfettered and say host it and whatever, yes, you're right, that's wrong. But you should have governance in place already beyond just for MCP servers that you want to put in place as well. Great question. I hope you understand the frankness of my answer, though. All right. Any other questions, sir?
One argue that, in light of his question, when MCP is truly ready for production in the real world, a more formal way to handle what he just asked would be to make it. I get that you can do things to mitigate.
Yeah.
But in my brain, I like the promise. I think that it's really ready. I need for it to come out of the box with some solution sort of more maintained. I don't know. I like to.
Right. So, I appreciate the question. When you say more solutions baked in, understand that MCP is not a tool. It is a standard. It is a protocol, right? Similar to REST, similar to HTTP, you don't ask for those things, right? You just understand it's a transport mechanism. So you can't bake that in, right? So you have to have other things in place in order to do that. So that's the answer for that. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Okay. All right. So I'm not going to talk about this one here because I think it's self-evident. On the local side, it is going local only, local database. On the other side, it is not. All right. And this is privacy. We talked about privacy already. Stays on machine, I'm not going to talk about that as well. Let's actually get to a demo so you can actually see this working. Use this one that we have here, and let's pray that the demo gods will work. All right. So we will come here, and we're going to turn off the one. Oh, it's actually set already. So this is the local one for both graph and this, and I'm going to come here and prove that out to you by going here and go to settings and click on developer and click on conference sessions. So you can see it's the same one there, Python 3, MS Graph, same thing as well. And I think this has my secrets in there, so I'm not going to open it up because I think we're definitely recording. So I come here and I say, all right, what sessions does Fabian Williams have around MCP coming up? Let's see what happens. So you can see it's going after the search conference sessions. I'm going to click this down right here. And there it is right here. So this is the one that we're doing. This is the one that we're in right now, right? This very session right here. Let's take a look at it. Actually, the room is wrong. But again, I liberated the data from a website. So it wasn't given to me formally. So I didn't have the room number. So it could be hallucinating, making stuff up. The time is wrong as well, too. Exactly, right? And the date is wrong. Now, actually, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Good catch. Let's do this right here. Let's take this real quickly. Control C. And come over to LM Studio. Same exact query. Let's play this game. And go to OpenAI. This is the big boy right here. So you're going to hear the fan spin a little bit. Let's not do that. And let's turn on, we want to turn on, which one? Yeah, conference session. And we want to turn on MS Graph. And we want to allow all for both. So it doesn't keep asking me questions about it. There it is. We don't want it to ask. We want it to just run. Okay. All right. And is it loaded already? Yep, it's loaded. All right. So let's put this. So reason effect is set to medium, and it has those two MCP servers inside here. Control V. All right. Let's see what happens. Now this is going to take a little bit of time, and what you can see as well. Oh, when I say a little bit of time, you can see now the GPU is screaming bloody murder. Oops. Oh. I know. All right, it is still moving. All right, there we go. All right. Yeah. So again, it could be my data. Let's do one more thing. Let's do one more thing. We're gonna turn this off, and turn on the one that's in the cloud. Do a new chat window so it's new, and ask the same question again. So now we're doing the one that is inside the container app. And proceed again. It's using my local model.
How much would using a smaller model affect your response time?
Based on the amount of quantization inside the smaller model, right? So this one is, so this flavor of ChatGPT comes in 20 billion parameter and 120. This one is better by a factor, by order of magnitude. All right, let's see what it says here as well. Okay. Hey, look at that. Okay, so the local model performed better than the hosted model. It got the time right. Well, is it right? Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, so and then it shows you the other one tomorrow as well. So look at that. Go figure. Now, if I run it again tomorrow, different answer, but that's a different story though. All right, but you can see here. So that was useful. But this by the way is the model that's outside in the container app. Okay, so that's cool for that. So you already know what happened. I'm not going to talk about that. So the key points here, and there's a lot of questions that we had from gentlemen that was here and gentleman over there that was talking about why you would do this. So privacy is usually the number one indicator of why somebody would do an MCP and do it also with local, because they want the ability to have these tool calling, they want the ability to have workflow automation, but they also want it secure. They also don't want AI to be training on their data and their prompts as well too. Now, a lot of people will tell you, including Microsoft, we don't train on your data. And that is true. Legally, it is true. Then the question becomes, do you ground on the data? And grounding and training are two different things. And as part of the EULA, the end user licensing agreement, you need to look to consider if a person is using your data for grounding to give it back to you because it's your data, and we're grounding on your data in order to give you back your answer, because that's something different legally. But I'm sorry? What is grounding? So training the data means that we're going to enhance the model to become better. So let me step it a little bit backwards. When you get a model right off the ship or right off the boat outside, it's just a model that can do next token prediction. You can't do anything much with that. You need to either fine tune that model or do other things to that model in order to make it better. So there's labeling that has to happen, which is I ask it this, it gave me that, it was good or it was bad, right? So human reinforcement learning or other different learning algorithms do that. And that's a process of fine tuning. You're training the model, which means that you can now ask the model a question and it's now trained to answer the question in a different way based on that knowledge. Because the model on its own has a cutoff date for when it was trained. It doesn't know anything beyond that. But you can fine tune it in order to get either more data that's more relevant or specific data. I had a person that came to a session a few days ago that they're in pharmaceutical and they want to make sure that the model is trained on that data. So they fine tune a model in order to get it so that it understands pharmaceutical stuff, right? Grounding is different. Grounding is almost like a RAG, retrieval augmented generation. You're allowing the model, even with the date that it's cut off, you're not training it anymore, but you're giving it additional data, additional context in order to answer the question for you, right? So it's not baked into the model. It is basically augmented into the model, right?
It's basically like caching, like what all the questions you've asked in the session previously, it remembers.
Exactly, right. Yeah, it's a good analogy. It's like, it's like having a cache, like a Redis cache available for it to basically call against. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat like a Java.
Awesome. All right, cool. So not training is also important. Data residency, there's a lot of things that's happening now in the EU relative to the United States in terms of what company can do with people's data and where it should live and so on and so forth. So that's an important factor as well. I know we're all in the United States here, so it may not apply to you, but if you work for a multinational organization, you may consider your solution where you actually have models that are in each geo for that reason. And audit trail is another important one as well. And I live in Maryland near different three-letter places, so air gapped is also a good reason as well too. And of course, compliance reasons is another factor. Cost is an important one because it is going to be, it's going to be cheaper to run a local model or a small language model than a large language model. And something you didn't ask, but it was asked before in a conference, I want to talk about it. You notice the models that I'm using even locally there, the 120B from OpenAI, the 70B from Llama, the DeepSeek R1, and the Quen. I just named 4 out of the ones that I have. Those are all reasoning models. Those are all models that are able to do tool calling. All right. So you need that in order to run an MCP server on there. So that alone in and of itself is an investment that you're going to have that's going to carry, you need additional resources to do that. Now, why is that important? Because maybe you don't need, maybe for certain particular things you don't need a reasoning model for. Right? You just need something to give you back a text that you can use somewhere else. So you could see a situation where you can actually have multiple models in a workflow. One that just does text stuff, which is very lightweight. One that does reasoning, that does MCP tool calls, and so on and so forth. That drives performance. And as I talked about before, context window, make it small, make it specific, give you better results. I want to talk about a couple of things here as well. These are, I'm not going to go deep in this, but these are names that you see being thrown around a lot. And I wanted to put them into context in terms of this talk. Now, hopefully by now you have a good idea of what MCP is. But you usually hear the word MCP being thrown around with A2A and also ACP. And you heard me talk about Claude skills today. So let's talk a little bit about them. So, and in this context, if you are an organization working on MCP, some of the primary drivers of that is that it is an AI that's working on your data. You own that data. The provenance of that data is inside your control, right? Inside your house, right? And you're going to put something in front of it, just like your own API, to make it available to your end users or anyone else that's outside, whether it's a B2B, B2C, or whatever. A2A is a different animal. It's similar, but it's a different animal altogether. This one now is where you're working in a distributed environment, right? You have let's say that you have a partner organization. You just have a relationship with them via a partnership, or you have a vendor that you work with, and they have their own agent. So let's imagine the world now where everyone has agents. Your company have an agent, this company have an agent, and so on and so forth. But they need to communicate with each other. That's where agent to agent comes in, because they may have their own agent that use MCP to talk to their backend stuff, but their agent speaking to the outside world need to have also a standard by which they can talk to other agents as well. That is where A2A comes in, agent to agent. Similar protocol, made by a different organization, but that's where we're headed to next. In fact, a lot of things right now is using A2A. They don't call it out. They just use MCP because that's what everyone understands. ACP is something that Andrew NG, if I can pronounce his last name, and the Linux Foundation has. That is pretty new. It does similar things to. It actually is a union between MCP and A2A. But it's not something I've played with a lot, so I don't know a lot about it. And Claude skills, as I mentioned before, it's a great union between MCP. Actually, it's the next version I think of what MCP is going to be. If you want to have your own MCP server, it is quite easy. If you clone the repo I have, within 5 minutes you can be up and running. It is not that hard to do. If you're vibe coding and have access to VS Code and GitHub Copilot and the other solutions, it's quite easy. Almost everything right now can create an MCP server for you. All right, now that the keynote, the Ignite keynote is over, I wanted to talk about just a few things as it relates to Microsoft, because you're at a Microsoft conference, obviously. But one of the things that I'm working on at Microsoft that got talked about today is Agent 365. I'm working on features that are surrounding the observability part of that. We have not talked about observability yet. That's the reason why I threw this inside here very last minute, because I didn't know how it was going to be announced today. But people were asking questions before in terms of the guardrails and security and stuff like that. You need observability in order to do that. Agent 365, which was announced today, which you're here, so you probably didn't see it, but certainly there's going to be recording, is a way that Microsoft is doing that. But you can also do this on your own if you're not a full Microsoft shop or if you want to do things on your own. But the key here, is that as agents are in play and are running with or without MCP, but certainly the context here is with MCP, is that you want to know a few things. You want to see it end to end. What query was sent? What was the utterance? Was there a prompt injection inside there? Was there a potential for a jailbreak attack? Because today on stage you actually saw the vectors, and it showed how you were able to shut them down and turn things off and stuff like that. A365 does it out of the box. But that's just the coming in part, just the prompt. Next thing you want to know is what tools were being called, for this particular utterance. Is it the right tool? Is it the wrong tool? Is it the tool that shouldn't be called under the circumstances because of X, Y, and Z? The person was inside the organization versus outside the organization. Was it a governance problem? That should be inspected as well too. What about RAI, responsible AI? Is it going to return something that's harmful? Is it going to be return something that that is has PII information or so on and so forth? That is now the orchestrator doing stuff as well too. You want to audit and have a visibility into that as well. But it could be something that's kind of like vanity metrics as well too. How well is this agent doing? Because one of the things that, if to the point I was asked before about having people just create agents on their own, one of the things that you need to consider is that you may have, let's imagine that this is one department, right? You may have people inside this row, this column here, that column there, building similar solutions, right? And they may have their own agents that do roughly the same thing, but they're not talking to each other. So now you have 3 or more agents that's doing the exact same thing. Now, I challenge you. How many people think that's a bad thing? All right. How many people think that's a good thing? One person and me. Oh no, maybe two people and me. I think it's a good thing. All right. It's the law of capitalism, right? There's going to be a true winner and a true loser in a free market, all right? So from a governance perspective, I totally get the argument. You're going to have stuff all over the place, and yeah, that's bad. The IT admin may have more work to do and stuff like that. But however, if you really want to see true winners and losers, the more the merrier, because over time you're going to see a hockey stick on one and flatline on the others. And you can literally use an AI to track that, right? You can track all of this metric there. There's not a human punching buttons. The AI is doing this. So the AI can basically say after 30, we call them R7, R1, R7, R30, R90, rolling 7, rolling 30, rolling 90. If you're at R90 and you're not gone up, you're gone, right? So you can manage that yourself, right? But if you stifle that innovation and stifle that growth, not a good thing. So that's my argument. It's not the argument of many, but if you needed to make this argument to someone yourself, now you can basically push it back on me. But if you look at the graph on the one right here, that says agent use or something where it's going up to the right, these are metrics that are important because you in an organization now can actually understand, we should have this metric. And if it was somebody who made it, maybe now you take is the wrong word. Maybe you involve that person with the enterprise and say, let's make this something now that we can all get behind. Put some nice thing around it, make it company branded, and then you can now put all of the things that you want to put in place with it. But I think more is the merrier here. I had this conversation 2 weeks ago in another conference, and it was the same answer. Most people think it's a bad idea, but once I explain it, they say, well, there's some thought to that. This one here is roughly the same thing. This actually is coming from, and I know it's an eye chart right now, but you don't really need to see everything on there. The point is that even in my solution that I created, in fact, why are we looking at this one? We ran some stuff, didn't we? If I come over to here now and go here, and this says 452, these are some of the ones that I just did a while ago. This is, let me click on this one right here, and click on this right here, and click on this right here. I know. You can see the tool call to the MCP server. Fabian Williams and this was the one that's asking about Fabian Williams and the conferences. So that's the answer that came back here, right here. But I'm using OpenTelemetry to do all of this. How many people here are familiar with OpenTelemetry? A few people. Excellent. It is an excellent standard. The internet is not playing nice with me now. All right. So in the tool, so for O3, for Agent 365, and for a lot of the things that I'm doing inside Microsoft, we are trying to adhere to standards as well. You know, as crazy as that seems, because we have a bunch of different people doing a bunch of different things at Microsoft around observability. I've taken it on to try and be the person to say we should abide by a standard and that standard should be OpenTelemetry. Not only that, there are semantic conventions for Gen AI in OpenTelemetry as well that I'm employing inside here. You'll notice that it has different names and different things like that. The reason why I think that's important, and the reason why if you also do this, it's important in the realm of observability, is that if you treat everything as a standard, then there's always going to be a baseline that someone can go back to no matter what tool they use. For the people who here know about OpenTelemetry, I'm sure you heard names like Grafana, Prometheus, Jaeger, Azure App Insights, Azure Monitor. Those are all things, all tools that can use OpenTelemetry. And as long as you stick to the standard, you could use that tool and pull in its telemetry and then have visibility into it if you want, but also take action. Some of these tools you can actually take remediation actions as well. So as you think about AI and you think about what your responsibility is, if you think this is something crazy and things can go sideways real quick, don't have observability be an afterthought. Observability needs to be baked in from day one, right? In terms of logging this, making sure you have your logs, your traces, your spans, all done correctly for you. Again, this is using my tool. This is analytics.conferencehaven.com. Just showing you here some of the things that the tool does. And again, I'm just trying to give you, fodder for your own things that you're going to build. Let me just go one back. These are some of the things that, if I'm using the tool, come up as metric. As a product manager or as a person that owns an MCP tool, what you may be curious about is, how many queries were being sent, how many total sessions, how many calendar invites were being sent. But moreover, if you're like an attendee like you guys here today, you maybe also want to find out what are the top categories that are being searched. One is, topic exploration, schedule planning, speaker searches, and logistics, and how do I get from point A to point B. These are things that the OpenTelemetry provided because it has the utterance, it has everything inside there, and you're able to now figure out as an attendee, should I attend this session or not? Why are people asking so many questions about this session versus that one? Maybe I should go take a look at that. Or what if somebody did at Ignite today using my tool? They basically, there was like 3 overlapping sessions, and they asked it to, here's a topic I'm interested in, give it to me in a table, order it from beginner to advanced, and tell me the differences between it. And it was able to give them that. Now, imagine you as a human being trying to do that. You'd have to go look at each session, keep it inside your head, maybe write something down in order to do that. Now you can actually have an LLM do that, because sessions are easy, right? It's a topic and an abstract and a speaker, right? 3 key fields. I'm going to pause here because I know it's like 17 minutes before time is up. I'll do one demo of what tomorrow looks like just to see if I can bait you into coming tomorrow if my internet is working. Conferencehaven.com. Click chat now. So this is now the one that's hitting the Azure Container app, and I'm going to do. So this is now not the this is now an agent calling the MCP server in order to, remember I told you, look at that. Remember I told you that I had guardrails in the system prompt, and I said if it doesn't know, it's going to ask you questions. This is an example of the guardrail working. No prompt injection attack. If this was something malicious, it actually is coming back. I'm going to say I want sessions. So if the gentleman left, but here's a classic example of putting it inside the system prompt in order to find the answer. And because I put Fabian this time, I know there's 2 people here with the name Fabian, and exactly what it has, 2 of mine and one of the other Fabian that's here as well. So I didn't say Fabian William. Is it you? Exactly. All right, so your session is there too, right? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So yeah, so basically you have my 2 sessions and the other Fabian session here as well too, that pops up.
I am a listener.
Oh, okay, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to say this. Give me the differences between these sessions. Which one should I attend in priority? Now this is, I don't know what's going to come back with. Maybe it's going to choose the other Fabian's session over mine. But let's see. Which session is better? It's very subjective. All right, let's see here. I'll tell you what. Let's do it again and ask it to give it in table format and why. Give me in table format and why. Just so we can see it better. And it could add it to the calendar as well too. I'll do that real quickly and then I'll stop the session and let you guys go give you a reprieve. All right, so here it is here. Intermediate intro. Yours is on top. Yours is on top.
I know.
Yeah, you know. Exactly. All right. I'm gonna say add session 1712. Add session 1712 to my calendar. Calendar at Fabian fabsgwill at gmail.com. Okay. All right. So if I come over here now and go to here and go to here and go to here. Oops, wrong. That's not what I meant to do. And go to here and go to here. There's your session, Fabian.
Oh, wow.
Look at that, right in my calendar. I'm going to stop here because that's a high note. If you want to see more, come to the session tomorrow that I have on this topic where I drill into details. But if you have questions, ask him. If not, thank you very much for coming.